Stop for a second and face it. You've spent your entire life trying to fit in. You've softened your tone, replayed conversations in your head, changed how you walk, how you love, how you decide, just to avoid being misunderstood. You've adjusted who you are to please people who never even asked how you felt. And all of that for one reason no one ever said out loud. You believed that being accepted would make you safe, but it didn't. Because the more you bend, the more they demand. The more you disappear, the less they see you. And the more perfect you try to be, the more you lose yourself, and no one notices. Have you ever watched someone who seems calm, even when everything around them is falling apart? They don't raise their voice, they don't force anything, they don't beg for attention, and still, the world seems to treat them with more respect than it treats you, the one who tries too hard, cares too much, bends too often. Maybe it's not life that's exhausting you. Maybe it's the weight of trying to hold everything together. You try to be seen, try to get it right, try not to make anyone uncomfortable. You change how you dress, how you speak, how you stand, and without even realizing it, you drift away from what's real inside you, just to fit into spaces you were never meant to be in. The pain doesn't come from rejection. It comes from the constant pressure of believing that if you just shape yourself enough, you'll finally be accepted. But what if that's the actual problem? What if the reason your life feels out of place is because you keep trying too hard to make it fit? This video isn't about giving up. It's about letting go, about understanding what Michel de Montaigne called lucid detachment, the clarity to stop controlling the uncontrollable, the lightness of walking away from those who never really saw you, and the brutal courage to live truthfully, even if it makes you invisible for a while. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why your need to please is slowly pulling you away from yourself, how letting go of approval changes how the world responds to you, and why your real power begins the moment you stop trying to impress anyone. Montaigne didn't write for the strong, he wrote for the exhausted, for those who've realized that being rigid doesn't protect you, it just drains you. And if you've made it this far, some part of you is already tired of trying to be perfect in a world that only respects those who are brave enough to be whole. Now, breathe, let go, let's begin. From a young age, you were taught to anticipate, to stay one step ahead, to measure every move, to keep things in order, as if the world would ever obey your anxiety. You learned that worry is a virtue, that suffering in advance means you're being responsible, that control equals protection. But no one warned you about the cost, because while you try to predict everything, life slips by. While you try to control everyone, you lose yourself. And while you try to please, you disappear, inch by inch, from who you really are. Michel de Montaigne, a thinker who lived through civil war, plague, and deep personal loss, wasn't cynical. He was clear. He looked at a chaotic world and saw people fighting impermanence with force, with tension, with control. But it was only after being thrown from a horse, powerless, defenseless, that Montaigne finally understood. Nothing I had planned could save me. Life does not submit to control. Life is movement. You are burning your best energy trying to hold on to what was never in your hands, trying to predict what people will think, trying to manage other people's moods, trying to appear stable, productive, pleasant, perfect. But inside, you're crumbling. My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. Michel de Montaigne. That quote is both a mirror and a warning. How many nights have you stayed awake planning conversations that never happened? How often have you postponed rest because something might go wrong? How many of your choices came not from desire, but from fear of things falling apart? You don't seek control to live better. You seek control to avoid being hurt. And that's exactly why you're suffering. The truth is brutal. but it sets you free. Control is the most expensive illusion you'll ever buy, and the higher the cost, the less freedom you have left. Montaigne wasn't promoting passivity. He never said to give up on life. What he believed was this: as long as you treat life like an equation to be solved, you will keep suffering like someone trying to tame the ocean with bare hands. Life isn't a plan. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not an emotional checklist. Life is flow. It's movement. It's wind. And the only way to walk with balance is to stop fighting the storm and start moving with it. You won't control everything, but you can learn to stand your ground in the chaos. You won't stop people from misunderstanding you, but you can stop trading your peace for their approval. You won't escape all your losses, but you can stop losing yourself to avoid them. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why your need to control is killing your ability to be present. How chronic worry became your addiction, disguised as responsibility. And what happens when you finally stop forcing life and start flowing through it. Now let's go deeper and open another wound, the addiction to being liked, and how your need for approval might be the most comfortable and most cruel prison you've ever learned to decorate from the inside. If you're tired of explaining yourself, tired of molding yourself to fit, the most honest part of you is about to wake up. You don't just want to be accepted, you want to be seen, you want to be validated. You want someone to look at you and say, "You're enough, exactly as you are." But that longing, honest and human, was hijacked by a world that turns acceptance into currency. If you conform, you're valued. If you challenge, you're discarded. So you learn to smile when you wanted to cry, to stay quiet when you wanted to scream, to shrink when you should have stood tall, all in the name of belonging. From early childhood, you were conditioned. A proud glance, a compliment, a quick dose of affection. All you had to do was comply, and you'd be loved. All you had to do was perform, and you'd be safe. So you learned not to disappoint, to adjust your tone, to hide your opinions, to smooth the edges of your authenticity until you fit. But Montaigne saw what most people refuse to see. If you're loved only for being agreeable, you're not being loved. Your mask is. And the worst part? When that acceptance finally comes, it doesn't heal you. Because deep down, you know it wasn't you that was accepted. It was your safe version, your curated image, your rehearsed smile. And your soul knows. It knows when the applause is for the performance, not the person. That's when the quiet pain begins to grow. You were loved, but didn't feel loved, because what they embraced wasn't real. You adapt. The room shifts. You shift. They change their taste. You change yours, just to avoid disapproval. But eventually a question echoes through the silence. Who am I when I'm not trying to please anyone? And the silence that follows is deafening. Montaigne offered another path, simpler, more brutal. Know yourself so deeply that no external approval can convince you to distort. Accept yourself so completely that no opinion can reshape your outline. From that place, everything changes. Your speech changes. Your gaze changes. Your presence changes. Because you're no longer begging to be accepted. You're offering your full self. And those who can't receive truth will quietly walk away. It hurts, but it sets you free. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why people-pleasing is just self-betrayal in disguise, how releasing the need for approval changes your entire way of relating, and why letting go of your image might be the first step to discovering your identity. Now, let's talk about presence. about the silent power of someone who no longer needs to convince, and how Montaigne taught us that true magnetism begins when you no longer need anyone to remind you who you are. If this already makes sense to you, it means your soul is already starting to let go. You were raised to believe that letting go means giving up, that it's weakness, that it's coldness. But no one told you there's a kind of detachment that doesn't come from indifference. It comes from clarity, from the sacred exhaustion of someone who finally realized, I don't have to hold on to everything. I just need to be whole within myself. Detachment is not abandonment. It's refusing to abandon yourself. It's stepping off the stage, letting go of the script, dropping the performance of who you think you should be, and finally inhabiting who you actually are, imperfect, honest, powerful. Montaigne understood this with rare depth. I don't write to be admired. I write to understand myself. He wasn't trying to persuade, he was seeking truth. And maybe that's why he became magnetic, because the presence of someone who doesn't beg for acceptance commands respect without a single word. Have you noticed how things start to align when you stop forcing them? How the right people stay when you're not trying to convince them? How decisions feel lighter when you no longer need external permission to feel okay? That's not magic, that's alignment. It's what happens when your thoughts, feelings, and actions finally move as one, when you stop living in pleasing mode and start living in truth mode. Detachment is not closing your heart to the world. It's no longer giving everything to those who can't receive anything. It's not about explaining your boundaries. It's about embodying them, calmly, clearly, unapologetically. Montaigne taught us that life blooms in lightness, that the effort to be ideal is what kills real peace, and that the most beautiful freedom of all is not needing to prove anything in order to exist. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why presence is more powerful than pressure, how detachment makes you stronger, not colder, and why true magnetism isn't about winning people over. It's about the inner coherence of someone who stopped begging to belong. Montaigne wasn't a stoic hero. He wasn't immune to pain. He wasn't some elevated spirit floating above human grief. He was a man carved open by life. He buried 5 of his 6 children before they reached adulthood. He lost his soul friend, Etienne de la Boétie, far too early. He watched France collapse into civil war, blood, chaos, fear. He had every reason to shut down, to harden, to give in to cynicism, to retreat into politics, bitterness, or rage. But he chose something else. He withdrew, not out of weakness, but out of reverence for his own soul. He built a tower, not a prison, a sanctuary. Inside it, surrounded by books, Latin proverbs carved into stone, and silences too deep for today's noise to survive, he wrote, not to impress, but to finally see himself without the mask. I do not portray the whole self, only the self I see at this moment. Michel de Montaigne. That sentence is liberation. It means, I'm not fixed, I'm not perfect, I'm not always coherent, and that's okay. How many times have you punished yourself for changing your mind, for feeling things you couldn't explain, for not being as strong as they expected? How often have you hidden your doubt just to appear in control? How often have you performed certainty just to avoid disappointing someone? Montaigne offers you something radical, the permission to be human, to contradict yourself, to not know, to change course, and above all, to forgive yourself. In a world obsessed with curated lives, perfected feeds, and emotionally engineered confidence, Montaigne is the opposite. He is the antidote. He looks at you and says, you don't have to get it all right. You just have to be real. You don't need to pretend to be strong all the time. You don't need to hide pain to look grown up. You don't need to keep playing a role that was never yours. True freedom isn't never falling. It's falling. and still staying whole. In the next few minutes, you'll see why recognized imperfection is more powerful than forced perfection, how silence can heal what noise only hides, and why the end of internal pressure is the beginning of peace with your own soul. Now, we enter the invisible climax of this journey, that quiet, unseen moment when something inside you simply lets go. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. And when you let go, life shifts. Because the moment you stop clinging to what's hurting you, you create the space for what was waiting to be born all along. If you want to know what that looks like, step into your silence and follow me.
There's a moment, almost invisible, no fireworks, no breakdown, just exhaustion. But not the kind that asks for rest, the kind that asks for surrender. It comes after all the effort, after all the control, after all the trying to be liked, to be enough, to be right. And then, something inside you just lets go. It's not giving up, it's not failure, it's wordless wisdom. You let go of control, let go of the script, let go of the image, let go of the need to be perfect, consistent, untouchable. And in that split second, something shifts. The anxiety quiets, the anger cools, the urgency disappears. And for the first time in a long time, you breathe. Montaigne called this reconciliation, not with the world, but with life itself, with the truth that it slips through your fingers, changes shape, makes mistakes, surprises you, and still, it's yours. You can still want things, but without forcing. You can still give, but without betraying yourself. You can still show up, but without shrinking. That's the beauty of detachment. It's not absence, it's presence without pressure. What happens when you let go of the fear of rejection? You speak with more truth. What happens when you release the obsession with perfection? You act with more courage. And when you let go of the need to be accepted, you finally see yourself whole. You don't need to change the world. You just need to change the way you inhabit yourself. And when that happens, the world slowly shifts too. Not because it became fair, but because now you know where they end, and you begin. Maybe you're still holding on to a person, an expectation, an image of who you were supposed to be. But here's the question now. What would happen if you just let go? No speeches, no explanations, no promises. Just let go. And maybe, for the first time, peace would come. Not as a reward, but as a response. And if you've made it this far, it means something inside you has already started loosening its grip. That's not weakness, that's freedom. You can scroll away, you can close this tab, you can go back to the SAM, or you can make one decision now. One decision. You can hit subscribe and step into a space where the truth is brutal, but liberating. Where being awake doesn't make you weird, it makes you danger. Because here, we don't worship positivity, we eat. So yeah, you can keep playing nice. You can keep being the guy who swallows everything you see, or you can join the only channel that respects your darkness, challenge, and gives voice to what you've buried for years. Crackdown isn't faux, but if you're still watching, it's probably for you. So hit subscribe, like this video and see I'm done pretend. That's how this starts. Not with noise, but with a decision.